my friends. It's Kelly Reeves, and welcome to the Broke Girl Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Broke Girl Podcast, and I am here with my dear friend, Arolyn Burns, who I've known forever. She's with the A Treatment Center, and I'll let her do her URL at the end. She's a licensed therapist with almost 30 years of experience in hypnotherapy and EMDR. So thank you so much, Arolyn. It's so good to see you. I'm so happy you're here. And, loss and grief has been obviously a big part of my life recently. And I keep seeing it a lot on social media, either a family member or a pet, which of course, pet is family. I know you've been through your own losses. And just here recently in Paso Robles, one of like a beloved doctor who grew up here, everybody knew him, suddenly passed away of a heart attack, and he was only like 50 something years old. So, and I know his wife, she's my dentist and in my book club. So I know, and they have two little kids. So, it's so traumatic when people go through loss, and this is such an important topic. So thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here. Sad about the subject, but
yeah.
It helps.
Yeah. Well, and I think people, because when I see it, I think a lot of people don't know what to do. Like they go through this loss, and obviously the loss of a, shocking loss, what I went through my mom versus something that, okay, they've been in the hospice for a long time and you can plan it. And like for me, when I found out about my mom, I was at a concert and I left because my sister was calling, and it was like everything stopped in that moment. And I was at a concert, I couldn't hear anything. Like I didn't, like my body and mind weren't connecting. And so kind of walk us through that process physiologically, like how that works.
So what you experienced was a traumatic loss. And so we'll focus on that first. And I've got to stop this because I'm seeing myself talk and it's driving me batty. So I don't know how to, sorry. How do I turn off me? I'm so sorry. I'm not even going to look at the camera. Sorry.
Okay.
So what you dealt with was a traumatic loss. So there's different types of loss, and we'll start with that, and then we'll move on to other types of loss if we have time. When you heard the news, it was shock.
Mhm.
It was so traumatizing. And so naturally your body went into a shock phase. So by dealing with that shock phase, you went into, like you said, you couldn't hear anything. You probably had blurry vision or cloudy vision. I call it a white out when you get that anxiety rush where it's just like everything blurry all in you. It's insane. You probably got foggy memory. You were probably, your knees might have buckled. There's so many different physiological reactions because your whole body just doesn't know what to do with anything. And you may stop eating, you may overeat, you may have trouble sleeping, you may sleep too much. All these things come in the days to follow. And there's a whole list of things that can happen. I can actually refer you to my website to read the whole list, to see what's normal, to see how long that's going to last. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
And we all deal with grief differently. We've all got different foreshadowing events that can affect us. You dealt with so much. I'm just remembering that, you lost your ex-husband who you were still really close to. You lost 2 dogs. You lost your mom.
Yeah.
And that, inheriting dogs.
Yeah.
So much that you went through when you were dealing with it. I was just overwhelmed with grief for you because that you were going through. And then on top of that, you had to deal with so much, the arrangements for your mom, and you had to go back there and handle the house. That is just such an overwhelming amount of things that I'm surprised at how resilient you were.
Well,
No, you were very resilient.
yeah.
You might have felt like you were falling apart, and many people can't do anything.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of, because I do EMDR therapy with my therapist, and just as a disclaimer, I would love to work with Arolyn, but because of the closeness of our relationship, we technically can't, or I think legally can't. But, but it's something that, and I started doing EMDR in 2020 because I think everybody was in a state of shock and trauma with COVID and being in lockdown, and we were losing people, and like people in hospital rooms and their families couldn't visit them. And that was just such a traumatic time that affected us all in such a way. And for me, being involved in animal rescue and that type of trauma, I started doing the EMDR then, and my therapist was one of the first people I called with my mom. I'm like, I'm going to need some help here because, and each and every one of my dogs passing, and Robert, I called her and because I knew I couldn't have gotten through it without some help. But the odd thing is like you said, people process grief differently. My sisters processed my mom's passing differently than I did. So why is it that, some people just feel like I felt like I was drowning in grief with my mom, like I couldn't function. And granted, I had just moved out of a house and into a new house. And I was still had boxes, and then I got the call and I had to go to Mississippi. So, but they seem to be able to kind of move on. And maybe that was just how the communication came across. But how can some people just seem like, okay, I'm done, I'm good, like life goes on, and some people just can't?
Well, you also had the previous losses as well.
Yeah.
Well, that made it more complicated, and we call that complicated trauma. And it it was almost like you're taking on a weight, and then you get more weight, and then you get more weight, right? And there's only so much
Yeah.
in the weight and tackle,
Yeah.
right? And eventually people crumble under that weight.
But yeah.
Your sisters probably weren't as close to Robert. They probably didn't, have that same connection. So that in and of itself was really heavy for you to begin with. And then the dogs. And
Yeah.
it's also a loss when you move.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's a good loss, you still were in the middle
Yeah.
of residence and moving into a new place. Change is hard, period.
Yeah.
Good change, bad change. I mean, even weddings, people
Yeah.
grieve the loss of their singleness.
Yeah.
There's so many different things. So what you had was literal okay, so I'm going to go back a little bit. So if you have 5 stressors in your life, it is enough for someone to literally have to go to an institution to recuperate.
Right.
5.
Right.
And be a wedding, a move, graduating from school. It doesn't have to be grief and loss, right?
Right.
It's changed.
Right.
So all your changes that you went through were really heavy grief situations. So probably that's why your sisters I'm sure they were dealing with it in their own way.
Yeah.
They seemed to handle it a little bit better.
Right.
They also probably have partners. I don't know your sisters, but they probably have partners that were there to support them. They had family that was close that could support them.
Right.
And you're living in a fairly new environment, so you don't have your support system as close or as many as you once did. So you didn't have that. One thing I am proud of you for is you're a writer, and you were writing about it, and you were sharing, and that is so key. Getting it out. Right. I mean, we always suggest journaling because get it out, right?
Yeah.
I also suggest, there's so many different stages that you go through. There's the depressive stage, and all these can intertwine and deal with all that. There's the acceptance stage, which people can actually go into early, and then all of a sudden they're in the bargaining stage.
Right.
And, then you're in denial, and then you're, in now I'm blanking because I'm doing it out of order, but
Right.
acceptance, denial, anger. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
hearing that. I mean, you might have had something that you were having a tiff with your mom about, and I'm not going to focus on you because I don't want to have you disclose all stuff that's probably going on in therapy, if there is any. But if we're angry at somebody that passes away, then we feel guilty.
Yeah.
And we feel, oh my God, what if? What's the part of me that added to the heart attack, or what it's me that added to this or that, right?
Right.
If it's a suicide situation, why didn't I see the signs? Why didn't I know, what was going on? Why wasn't I there? Why didn't I? I'm going to a funeral tomorrow.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So it's a friend I hadn't seen in a long time, but we had been communicating, and he told me it was bad, and I didn't go visit. So I'm grieving the fact that he told me it was bad. Why didn't I make the time? Like I was into that. In the midst of it, I didn't believe it was that bad. He said they were going to cut it out all over his body, cancer. So I had to go through that process, and even going to the funeral tomorrow, I'm going with the intention of saying something to him. I believe that, I'm a Christian, so I believe that, he's in heaven. I knew him through church. He was amazing. So I can actually share with him because I believe the veil between, heaven and earth is very thin.
Very thin. Yes.
So I'll talk to him. And that's one of my ways of processing it. I'll just say, Sean, I'm so sorry, but I loved you. I get to see you again. You're in heaven. That's great. Other people have different ways of coping with their spirituality. They have different ways of grieving. There's a difference between bereavement and grief. Grief is what we experience inside all of the emotions, but bereavement is how we express it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be publicly. So, back in biblical times, to throw ashes and things on their head and, walk around all in black, and butchers, they still do. But that's a way of honoring the memory for that person, right? So a lot of my friends, we do celebrations of life because we believe that they've moved on and they get to be in the presence of God, right? So it's not really a grief thing for them, but those of us left behind, we're grieving. We miss them. We want to say things to them. So one thing I recommend, and I might be out of order and stuff, but recommend is, having that conversation with them. A friend of mine lost his dad many, many years ago, and I loved the way he was grieving it. Or bereavement. He was actually, he used to play pool with his dad. So he had a pool hall in his house or pool room, whatever you want to call it, and set up a picture of his dad, put a beer next to his dad.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Drink a beer and play pool.
I love that.
And that was his thing. And it was so brilliant because it was still keeping that memory alive.
Yes.
A lot of people feel guilty talking about their deceased partner years later. They're like, I should have moved on. I should have moved on. Why? You love that person. Love doesn't die.
Right. Oh, I so love that you just said that because I have a friend that I've known since, I think I've known her since junior high. And I was talking, I did my video like, oh, I'm talking to Arolyn Burns. And she reached out to me. So she's married, but her husband lost his former wife of 35 years. And he did a post on the anniversary of the former wife's passing that was, I loved you. I brought so much joy. I felt so lost. I feel so lost without you, and all this stuff. And my friend was kind of hurt about it because she's like, okay, but don't I make you happy now? Like, what about our future? So she reached out to me. It is just so kind of, serendipitous that you said that because she's like, how do I handle this? And how do we work together as a couple with him still grieving the loss of his former wife, but having a future with me?
Yeah, that happens. It got to be very hurtful. It feels like a betrayal.
Yeah.
But what's really good to know is he's confiding in her when he talks about his ex or deceased wife. What do you even call that? I don't even know.
Well, Robert was my ex-husband. I call him former husband, but he did this post on Facebook about his.
And that's his processing. Remember, we talked about the writing.
Right.
So, he's writing it out. He's sharing his feelings. It's probably he's got similar friends that they shared. So it's his way of saying, I still miss her. And then if your friend is able to listen and hear about the wife, when you get married, you're marrying your best friend, I hope.
Yeah.
So we're going to want to confide in you, right? Share what's going on inside.
Yeah.
That can actually bring you closer.
Yeah.
I know it's difficult, but think about when you talk about your mom, you're talking about your mom and how much you loved her and how you guys wrestled with whatever you wrestled with, because we all wrestle with mom issues, right?
Yeah.
You share that with a friend
Yeah.
and it feels good.
Yeah.
So he should be able to share with his partner. And if she's got stuff that's burdening, it's not the time to bring it up to him, but it is the time to go to her therapist and work through why am I feeling these feelings? What's going on here, right? Because it's normal to feel jealous of the previous wife. It's normal to feel like, well, you're supposed to be mine.
Yeah.
But he is.
Yeah.
He is.
So, okay, we have so much because I had kind of a different perspective. I was like, well, I can understand why you were hurt. But yeah, it's like if you lose anyone, like a spouse, partner, a parent, a child, God, child, that's another thing. Like, I can't even imagine. Um, you mourn it and you talk about it. But I can say, like, okay, I'm not ever going to have another mom. So it's not like another woman's going to come down and be my mom. And then I talk about my mom and she's going to be upset that I'm talking about my former mom. So I think it's different, like in a partnership, when you have the ghost of the former partner kind of always kind of coming into the current relationship.
Yeah, it's hard
Yeah.
for the person grieving. They need their current partner to be there for them.
Right. And that's all you got to say. Yeah. Just bottom line.
I'm also thinking, I mean, it's okay to share that it's difficult, but not in that moment.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, like, it would be okay if in another time where things are good, you could say, when you shared that, I want you to know I wanted to be there for you and I love being there for you and I love that you're open with me. But I need to just share that it hurt.
Right.
And maybe share a couple things, not delve into it and get deep. But that's also part of the partnership, is letting them know,
Right.
oh, that kind of stung,
Yeah. 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 But not you were happy with me. So
Yeah, and it's normal to feel that way.
yeah. Yeah. So okay. Well, is it because and I love that because love actually never dies. Like I'll always love my mom. I'll always love Robert. I'll always love my dogs. And even though like I inherited two dogs, like I kept one. Like, it can't replace what the love I had and will always have for Sugar, Hershey, Kramer, and Hector. Like the list goes on.
Got a giant heart.
Yeah. Thank you. But going back to like a non-human loss, so like a dog. So we announced yesterday that we're closing the rescue. Um, so just because donations have dried up with the past few years in the economy, and we're a foster-based organization, it's been really hard to find fosters. So Monica and I are like, look, it's been almost 12 years, 650 animals. It's a lot of work. She's dealing with stuff, she's got work because she's got a husband and they want to move and get a new house. And so, but there was a sadness in me when I was doing the post, like, oh my gosh, like, and I like, and all these memories rushed in of all them, like going to the shelters and that dog and this cat and this situation and this, and it's so, it's a different level of grief, but it's still, it's not sad, like, I'm mourning it, but it's sad. And, it's kind of a different type of sadness.
And another loss.
Yeah. But it's a chosen loss,
But still a loss. It's so often we discount it, right? Because it's, well, I chose to do this, like a move. I moved
Right.
it. Right? I'm grieving the fact that I'm not as convenient to things. Yes,
I know. Way out of the country now.
okay. It's okay.
No one comes to
Right?
visit me anymore. No, like, you're too far out there.
It's normal, right? There's always going to be change. And when you're thinking about how much you did for those dogs that you rescued, I mean, 650 dogs, that's 650 lives you saved.
Yeah.
That's impressive, right? And it's a part of your identity.
Yeah.
Now you're transitioning your identity. So there's no, yes, there are more significant losses, but
Right.
any loss is worthy of the grief and there is no time frame.
Yeah.
You can still 20 years later, have this wave of emotion that hits you. The goal, healthy healing, is that sobbing out loud, which you should do, by the way.
Which I did. Not with the rest of it, with my mom. It was.
Yeah. Yeah. But you should express those emotions when you have them. We often feel like, oh, I shouldn't, it's too late. I'm, get over it. I hate that. Get over it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not.
Right. Exactly. Thank you. I'll get over it when I'm ready to get over it.
Right. Yeah.
But then there's the, I guess, quote unquote, healthy grieving versus okay, when do you seek help? Like, when is it time to be like, okay, there's a healthy grieving. And again, everybody's grieving period is different, but when is it, like, when should people go, or maybe not people, because sometimes we don't even realize it, but people around them that care about them be like, okay, it may be time for you to get some help.
Mhm. Well, you kind of know when it's affecting your life. You may be gaining a lot of weight, losing a lot of weight. When it's affecting your life, is the real key note of it's time to get help. If you're alienating people or people are alienating you, if you feel like you can't talk to anyone because maybe other people had different emotions and they're not able to validate yours, it may be that um, you're just not coping. If you're crying incessantly for a year,
Yeah.
might be a good sign it's time to get help. But I still grieve, and my most recent loss, other than my dear friend, but real personal close loss was my dog. You know that, and that was a little over a year and a half ago.
No, I love that little guy.
And he went everywhere with me. He slept at the
Yeah.
Apple boyfriend
Yeah. Yeah.
to grow up with me. So it was a huge. I didn't have my sleeping companion.
Yeah.
And he was 18 and a half. So just the other day, I saw something and I got teary.
Yeah.
And it's a dog.
Yeah.
And I'm not minimizing it because it's my baby. It was
Yeah,
my
you
child,
have a baby.
right? He literally was my child.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I'm still doing that over a dog, not minimizing a pet, but
Right.
what about a loved one that, your mom, who invested her life into you, or a partner that you had this long romantic relationship with, or even a brief one, but it was really hot and heavy,
Right.
there's these connections that we make and they take a part of our heart.
Right.
And it is valid to have those emotions. But if you're not eating well, if you're not sleeping well, if you're not able to work, if it's affecting current relationships in a way that's very negative, then you may want to. I'm a huge advocate for doing group grief therapy. A lot of churches offer it for free.
Yeah.
So that is my first suggestion to anyone, because you're going to be hopefully in a group of people that are dealing with very similar emotions at a similar time in their life.
Mhm.
And I've even heard about people finding future partners, that not that we go there looking for that, because you make that connection so well
Yeah.
that you really get it. You
Yeah.
get each other, and long lasting friendships. And, if you're a member of a church community or a temple or whatever, it's really important that you've got somebody that is able to share with you the same values, the same beliefs, the same afterlife values.
Yeah.
And then if that's not, I don't like to say enough, I'm using a lot of hand quotes, but
I listen to your quotes, so they're
right? It's just, it's hard because everybody's got their different definition for
Right.
certain things and words and experience. But what we really want to do is we want to make sure that your needs are being met. And if a group doesn't meet the needs enough, then that's the time to find a therapist. And I don't care if therapists offer it. You can ask for a free 15-minute phone consultation. I give it to every future client. I want to make sure they feel comfortable working with me. I want to be sure that there's that rapport, because a lot of it is the relationship.
Right.
Yes, we have training. Yes, we have skills. Yes, we have background and stuff. But the main thing is you've got to feel like you can be vulnerable and honest and open with your therapist, and that they can support you in this time.
Yeah.
That's when you need the therapist.
Yeah.
So if the group doesn't work, if family isn't able to be there, or loved ones or family, friends that you call family.
Yeah, I love that.
If that's not there for you, then it's really important that you find the help you need. And then, of course, last resort is medication, and it can also be the initial response as well. Tell your doctor the minute you're dealing with this stuff. Tell your doctor.
Yeah.
Your doctor's going to know what your normal health looks like, and they're also going to know when you're declining if you're open and honest with them.
Right.
You can't hide. You can't isolate. Make sure you exercise. Make sure you. For me, I'm from Pasadena, and we had the fires recently, so I was grieving loss of my hometown. I also grew up going to Palisades a lot.
Yeah.
Drive there a lot. Hiking the things there a lot.
Yeah.
So for me, that's my history, and it's burned to the ground.
Yeah.
So I was in that, twilight zone thing for a while, and just went and walked on the peninsula at the ocean and just listened. For me, it's worship music, talk to God. Didn't even walk fast. It wasn't for exercise. It was just, I'm zoned out. I was grieving. So, we all experience it differently, but definitely get out, fresh air, sunlight, all the basic things for health. Make sure you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables.
Yes.
Not drink the green juice stuff or whatever. And one time when my heart was broken, like I was grieving so bad, I couldn't get out of bed.
No.
All I could do, I remember I was so weak from not eating that I literally crawled to the freezer and got frozen yogurt. It's high in protein. It gave me the energy I needed, but that was all I could do. But yogurt goes down, you don't have to chew it. So yogurt.
Yogurt. There are so many people when you bring up the fires that lost so much. I mean, their homes, their memories, how, and that's a whole different grief process. And then there's the trauma of the fear of, oh my gosh, fire. And then you have to evacuate. And then you think, what do I take? What about my animals? Like, how do I get out of here safely? And then, so there's that level of anxiety in your sympathetic nervous system and fight, flight, or freeze, at a hyper speed.
Yep.
But then you get allowed to go back and you see everything's gone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Ashes everywhere. And you're not allowed to go there. So many people weren't even allowed to go back to their homes to even see what was left because of all the looting and because of the safety hazards that had to do with the soot and the, ash and the blah, blah, blah. It went on and on and on.
Yeah.
And some people, I don't even know if they've had an opportunity to clear out their land yet, and it's trying to find any little memento, you're grasping. What about? And it's the same thing with any kind of grief. We're all trying to find a reason, a purpose.
Yeah.
Where to go next and why.
Right.
Big fat why.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it is, so when the doctor I mentioned earlier passed away, and he was just such a huge part of the community. But when you see losses like this, and there was if several, I guess, maybe 20 years ago, maybe less. But anyway, a woman that lived in Ladera Ranch, and I think she had triplets and was in a car accident, and all 3 children died. And so, but you have to wonder, where's the why? And you're a believer, I'm a believer. We get mad at God. I mean, and I'm not gonna lie, I got mad at God with my mom. I was like, why did you take my mom away? I was not ready. You didn't ask my permission to do this. So how do people process, and this is a belief-based art of loss and grieving, but a lot of people want to go also into the blame game, either blaming themselves, blaming God, blaming somebody else. So how do they overcome that part?
Well, first I want to say it's okay to be mad at God.
Yeah.
He can handle it.
Right. I think so. Yeah.
I'm just going to share a little bit about, I was so mad at God. I was probably 26 years old, and I was back living at home after college. It was before I started grad school. So maybe I was a little younger, but my heart was broken. I had totaled my favorite car, convertible. I was so mad at God. He had taken everything away. It was all his fault. And I was cussing him out, kicking and screaming and pounding or like a 2-year-old. I was so effing pissed at God.
Yeah.
And I literally heard, not like audible, but like I heard, "Are you done?"
Mm, mm, mhm.
Okay, that was weird.
Yeah.
It was this calm, peaceful, settling. It was accepting. It was,
I hear you.
yep, and I'm still here.
And now stop.
It wasn't control. When I
Yeah.
hear stop, it feels controlled. This was, "Are you done?
Yeah.
Did you get it out?
Right.
Enough."
Yeah.
Right? And it was still this loving, grace giving, "I'm here."
So powerful. Oh my gosh. I love that. And then, yeah.
I've done it since too.
Yeah.
Maybe not the kicking and
Oh,
screaming.
I've done it too. I mean, there have been plenty of times where I'm just like, it's like, yeah, like you yelling at him, cussing at him. And yeah, and it's like, okay, are you done?
Mhm.
Because you can go on or you can stop. And that's when we kind of have to get control of ourselves, I think, and go, okay, let me take a breath. Let me stop. Let me, do what I can do. But, a lot of people, when it comes to grief, I also think people, and just based on how they post things on social media, is that they want to fight their grief. Like they want to be strong and they don't want to, they don't want to feel weak, or maybe they haven't accepted it yet. So how do you like normalize the grief process? Because like I'm not afraid to like throw it all out there on social media. And that's my healing process. And some people have accused me like, oh, you overshare. Well, this is my way of handling a difficult situation in life. My hope is that not only will it help me, but it will help somebody else. So, how can we, I guess, normalize grief so people can be okay with openly expressing it and being vulnerable?
Oh, well, that takes vulnerability.
Yeah.
Not if he wants to be that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's grasping at control because you feel out of control,
Okay.
right? And when you feel out of control, what do you want to do? Get back in control.
Right.
So I'm going to do whatever it takes to get back in control, be it riding my motorcycle really fast, which isn't safe.
Right. Without a helmet.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe going to surf the giant waves,
Right.
maybe being sexually explicit,
Mhm.
right? People handle things different ways. Overdrink,
Mhm.
snort too much coke, whatever.
Yeah.
We all have our coping skills. We all have our ways of what we think is going to fix it,
Right.
or at least let me feel like I'm back in control. At least I know I'm responsible for this.
Right.
And until we're able to grieve, to rest in the moment of, okay, that's where you get to the acceptance piece. And the acceptance piece intertwines with the pain.
Mhm.
You can't have acceptance without experiencing the pain.
Right.
You can't heal without acknowledging you're hurting.
Yeah.
So that's why the journaling, that's why the therapy, that's why the friends, that's why,
But how about that on social media?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so good to do those things. Um, I'm sure some people put up shrines to their deceased. For me, I have pictures all over the place of my grandparents, of
Yeah.
my dog,
Yeah.
and I've got, you know, little reminders that pop up. And I think it's so great. I love my iPhone, and
Yeah.
we get those memories in the
Right.
picture thing that pop up. I think that was such a great thing because sometimes they're painful.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're people we're not friends with anymore. And you can grieve the loss of a friend that you even had that's still alive.
Right.
But sometimes losing a friend can be just as painful as a death.
Yeah.
They're not in your life anymore, and this was by choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one thing when they die, but it's another thing when somebody intentionally walks away,
Yeah.
right? So divorce can be very painful.
Oh, yeah.
It's all these different things that they're all grief, they're all loss, they're all things we need to find a way to process, to come into an understanding of there was beauty in that relationship
Hmm.
and reflect on the beauty of those things
Hmm.
and remember the beautiful parts and then say, okay, now how can I've used this in my book, how can fertilizer
Right.
have some beautiful flowers now?
Yeah.
Now, how can we move forward from this and not forget it,
Right.
not forget the person, not forget the situation, not forget, that relationship, that loved one, that cherished, whatever thing it is that we're processing and grieving, but we really want to be able to get some hope out of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And as soon as we're able to find like that glimmer of hope, the silver lining, so to speak,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, you know, you can think of it as your mom's looking down and watching, and you can talk to her anytime, and you can share with her your experiences. You can, write her a letter. You can go to the beach and have her join you and
Yeah.
have a conversation, right? There's
Yeah.
so many things, there's so many things that we can do.
Yeah.
Embrace that person, that experience, relive it, go back and go to places that you've had intimate moments. Um, it's really important for people who are grieving maybe a divorce or something like that to go back and create new happy memories with a good friend, or go back and, if Disneyland was your place with your partner, go back and experience it without them, knowing it's going to hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like just step into the pain. And that's like brings me to what EMDR is. And I'll let you kind of explain that. But it was so like literally, I could not have gotten through all of my losses and stuff without and the journaling. And I also do EFT every day because that's something you can do up self. So, right. But it wasn't like EMDR was really and it brought a bunch of other stuff up,
Mhm.
that I haven't really thought about from my past, my childhood that I never processed. And I think because I was able to go back into that trauma and that past experience that was unfortunate and like dig it out, it's almost like I pulled a bunch of weeds out.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Right.
So explain, what EMDR is and how it can be so powerful in the healing process of loss.
Okay. Well, normally it'd take me like an hour to explain it. So I usually bring people to my website so they at least understand the outline of all 8 stages. But
Right.
try and sum it up. Uh, about like regular talk therapy, because you've got to process what you're dealing with. And then what everybody thinks about is the bilateral stimulation of the brain.
Right.
I don't know what technique she's using for you. I'm not a fan of the eye movement.
Oh, she used either sound or touch.
Perfect. That's me too.
Yeah.
I've got headphones that beeps
Yep.
and little buzzer things that vibrate
Yep.
green. And up.
Or it was, that.
Yeah, oh, that'll tapping. Yeah,
Yeah.
play jazz. And then that's also you had mentioned EFT. I'll go back into EMDR in a second, but you mentioned the tapping.
Yes.
That's poor man's EMDR, and I teach that to my clients that
Yeah.
their own if they've had a severe trauma that they're having triggers in their daily life.
Right.
And it's great that she is having you do that too. So EMDR stimulates left and right hemisphere of the brain, allowing communication between the creative side, which is the right side, and the left side, which is more logical. And when we have PTSD, which is what they did their studies on to find that it's 87 to 93% effective on working with victims and more veterans. So, we
Thank you for serving our veteran.
you're welcome. I'm thankful for them.
Right.
And so as we stimulate the left and right hemisphere, we're actually allowing the brain to communicate where it wasn't able to. There's been some kind of blockage, and so they loop. And so usually, when you dream, you're processing what happened throughout the day. And we get REM sleep where your eyes are going back and forth. Well, Francine Shapiro noticed that, started doing her own research when I was still in graduate school, I think is when she started, might have been a couple years before. But when I heard about it, it was one-page flyer. Now it's this whole program. And
It's like a
it's huge.
3-day Britannica.
Yeah. So pretty crazy that now it's something that I practice, because at the time I just thought, that's really cool. That was that.
Right.
So the stimulation of the left and right hemisphere allows you, and by being able to close your eyes and no longer having to follow something with your eyes, you can visualize and imagine the incident. And brain puts things together kind of in categories. It's very organized. And so if a neuronal pathway fires with another one, it's making a connection, and the synapses fire, right? What fires together bonds. So every time this path is made, a new connection is formed. When something similar, your brain put it in that same category, it makes a thicker bond. And then another similar incident happens, and so on and so on and so on.
Right.
This really thick bond,
Yeah.
and you're having what used to be maybe a functional reaction to a trauma. It helped you at one point in time because your brain said, oh, that worked. Let's go together, right? So it's no longer serving you. So what we want to do is we want to create a new pathway that is healthier, that will work for you now. And it may mean, if you're dealing with trauma like rape or, war, or, I had a lot of different incidents I can refer to. But if you're thinking about a rape situation, that one incident can impact every sexual experience after. But if we're actually able to go back to the first or the worst and target that memory, it doesn't have to be real life solved. But I had clients who were actually able to go back and beat up their offender, or protect the child that was being abused, or recreate another scenario. There's so many different things that can be done with EMDR that you're actually able to go back there and see what different outcomes there could be.
Yeah.
Something about that creative side, going in there and working on it, it can take away the PTSD symptoms, so that you can actually say, it's the same effect as I got a bruise on my elbow.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why now, like I can have a healthy kind of relationship with losses and with money. And I'm really open about like the money traumas I had. And so with my therapist, we went back in like, okay, where did that start? How do you create like a new story? Because it's like our lives are all about the story we tell ourselves, right? So even if it was a real life trauma situation, and we talk about this in self-defense too, and we have to when it comes to CCW, the state of California requires that mental health component because of the aftermath of the use of lethal force in a self-defense shooting, what you go through. So not only did you go through that, oh my gosh, I'm being attacked, but then you also took a life. So you have to really deal with that in a way. So because it's a similar thing, like you go through all these levels of, you're first being attacked, and so now you're all like your adrenaline, everything's all over the place. But then you had to take a life. And at first it feels justified. Well, they were going to attack me. But then as a normal, rational, decent human being, the reality sets in of what you had to do. So so I always recommend, like, if you're like doing MDR, because you're going to go through a lot of trauma, and it's not taking away what happened, is just having less of an impact in your life.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah. And I can say it 100% works. Because like you said at the beginning, like after all of my losses, like, that was like institution, could like worthy stuff. But because I've done all this work on myself and the EMDR and the EFT and, journaling, like that is my biggest outlet, is writing and sharing. And, In my video I did this morning about even if you're broke, you can help people because helping people, it really does something to your parasympathetic nervous system where it starts to kick in. So, like volunteering or doing something where you start to feel helpful can start to minimize also that grief and loss and pain and trauma.
I'm going to segue from that because that's a great, great thing. If you don't feel like I don't need to go to group therapy, I don't need to go to a grief group, well, then go for the people that are there that do, and you can be a support to them
Yeah, such great advice. Yes.
because we all need somebody. And if you can be empowered to help someone else, even that's healing.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody else is hurting from the same thing that you're going through, just go to the group to be a support to them.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that while you're there might be a little something that you got. Like, yeah, if you don't feel like you need to go, you might just want to check it out just in case.
Yeah. It can't hurt. But no, but I think people, again, going back to like, when you don't want to go like, and maybe it's the stigma of group therapy where people think like, oh, well, I'm not an alcoholic or an addict. I don't need to go to grief therapy or group therapy. And I'm like, well, there's different types. It's for everything. And it's really having a support system around you in a difficult time. But it's really, and it's so cliche to say, but it's true. It's acknowledging it is the very first step of I have this problem.
Yeah.
I need help. And whatever that problem is.
Yeah.
So with hypnotherapy, because you've done hypnotherapy on me, and it was just because it was super cool. So kind of walk us through that really quick. Like how that is helpful and how is it different from EMDR and how do people choose between the two different types of therapies?
Well, with my clients, most of the time they want to do both because hypnotherapy, I say, is really great for phobias, for insomnia, for dealing with the physiological symptoms of even dealing with the trauma, right? And since EMDR is 8 stages, I like to incorporate the hypnotherapy in around stage 3, where we're learning coping skills and tools, smooth and contain. I do customized recordings, as you know, and we just really extrapolate from the person. I'm mining their brain for data to try and figure out what are you telling yourself? What are your physiological symptoms? How can we reframe the negative self-talk? How can we reduce the negative symptoms, the panic, the shakiness, the cloudiness? Maybe it's your blurred vision. When you get a heightened state of awareness, your vision literally blurs.
Yeah.
It really is affected. It's not imaginary. It really does. There's certain things that go on chemically in your brain that change the way you see and hear things.
Yeah.
So somebody could be talking to you and you're not hearing a word they're saying, or you're hearing what they're saying and it's not what they're really saying.
Yeah. And then you're like, did you say that? Like, what? That's not at all what I said.
And so when you're going through those things, having the tool of hypnotherapy where you make the customized recording, you listen to it every night for 2 weeks straight. Yay, you've got something to calm you down. And now you've got a tool that after the 2 weeks, I'm not saying don't listen to it,
Mhm.
but you might not need it as frequently. I've got one client, I hadn't seen him in 5 years for insomnia, calls me up because I went to Russia, I got insomnia again. Need cassette tape.
God and sorry. You got to.
Yeah. And I couldn't see him because I was busy. And so a week later, we were scheduled and he goes, never mind, I found my tape.
That was it. Yeah.
And what's cool about that is he realized how powerful it was. I saw him for several other things that he wanted to work through. But it was so awesome to validate for me that this customized recording is so specific to you that it will work for you for the rest of your life on that issue that we're focusing on.
You should charge royalties for this. I want $100 every listen. No. For the rest of your life.
I'm happy that it works. I'm happy to share it with people because, the reward I get is people are getting better. People have the tools now to do what they need to do to heal.
Yeah.
All I can do is give the tools. Like, here you put a hammer, a nail, and a picture. You want to hang the picture? I'm not hanging it for you. You got the hammer and nail. I'll tell you how. I'll show you how. I'll model it for you. But if you don't do it, I, I wish I could. I wish I could wave my magic wand and be like, you're better now. But it worked. The fastest thing I know about. It's powerful.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, because someone did a post in a Facebook group and they posted anonymously and said, I have a family member who's dealing with alcoholism. How do we, we try to tell him, and or her, I don't remember if it was a he or she, but we feel lost. And I'm like, you can lead a horse to water, but people have to self-empower themselves to be able to take that first step and go, okay, maybe I'll just, maybe I'll pick up the hammer first, and then maybe I'll pick up that nail. And it's the same thing with grief and accepting, like, I'm at a level of grief where I can't handle it anymore. So, and people could tell. So I guess, and this question came up in my book club with, because I immediately texted my dentist and member, I just said, hey, I heard, I'm so sorry. I'm here if you need anything. Let me know if there's anything I could do. And we were talking about it in book club, and people asked me, they're like, well, is it okay to reach out? I mean, what do we even say? And I said, well, you know what? Here's the deal. I said, when my mom passed, I heard from people that I haven't spoken to in years. And there are people that I considered my close friends that I never heard from. So that's always a question, like, how do you approach that person who's going through such tremendous loss and grief, like right when it happens?
Listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't put your 2 cents in. Don't say, anything that is a cliche thing that is so frustrating when somebody is like, just saying that, it'll get better, you'll get over it, those kind of things are, it just takes time.
We're in a better place.
Yeah, duh.
Which is the last thing I wanted to hear, because I know, but I'm not ready. I'm not there yet to accept that she's in a better place, because she's not here in the place that I want her to be in. Like, I can't pick up the phone and call her anymore. I can't, do any of this. So they're in a better place. Like, deep down I knew it, but I wasn't ready to hear that. So, but you also I don't want people to feel sorry for me. Like, oh God, poor Polly,
It's okay if they do.
Yeah.
See that right there. I don't want them to feel sorry for me. Well, it may be how you're interpreting it,
Right.
but it's actually them caring for you.
Okay.
Because we all go through things. And if you let somebody come alongside you and just sit with you or ask you what you need or say, how can I help? Is there anything that I can do that would make you feel better? Is there anything I can do that would make you feel understood?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to cook for you?
Yes.
Come over.
But it's true, because when people, we were having this conversation and people ask me, like, what did you want to hear in those days, moments and days, and after, you found out about your mom? And I was like, I just wanted, like, if you just said, I'm so sorry for your loss, what can I do? Or is there anything I can do? I'm like, that was fine by me, because I know people were sincere.
Yeah.
And the couple, like my two girlfriends that I was with at the concert in the park, like when I came back to get my chair, and they knew like something was up with my mom, because I'd been checking my phone, and I told them, like, we did a welfare check, called the police in Mississippi and whatever. Like, they literally, I walked back and I was just like, and they both just grabbed me, grabbed my chair, grabbed everything. And in the few days I had before I went to Mississippi, they were coming over and keeping me. And they're like, you don't even have to say anything if you just want to sit here and cry.
Oh.
I just love that about them, because I was like, well, but there's this part of me that's like, no, I don't want to take your time up by sitting here crying. But then they were being so gracious and wonderful and saying, like, look, if you just want to sit and cry, do it. We'll just hang out. And I just love that they did that for me. So it was very healing, and it made me feel, because, like you said, I'm all the way out here in the country now. I don't have a significant others. I don't have kids. I don't have again. Like I felt so physically alone. And I think even when you have maybe significant other people, you can still feel alone in your grief.
Yes. In fact, some of the loneliest people are people who are in relationships that don't feel understood.
Yeah.
So if you want to be there for someone who's grieving, ask them what they need.
Hmm.
Judgment is toxic.
Yeah.
Any relationship.
Every way, shape, and form.
And shoulds are never good,
No.
right? So I'm here.
Yeah.
Want to sit? If you want to walk, if you want to cry, if you want to just sit,
Hmm.
tell me about them. If you're comfortable, share. Tell me about your mom. Tell me, what do you remember that she did when you were a kid? That kind of thing. Where it's like, tell me, I want to hear. I want to know.
Yeah.
Show me pictures, but you don't have to.
Right.
But I want to be in this with you.
Yeah. I want to support you in this time. Yeah. And I think people just don't know what to say. And it's like, well, and because I think, because people, there are good people out there and they have good hearts, but like, I think also if you're a natural, like, empath, then you feel the pain too. And you're like, I don't know what to say, because I'm also feeling the same pain and I feel uncomfortable, but I don't want to say the wrong thing. It's like when somebody gets a cancer diagnosis or something, like a terminal illness, like, and I've spoken to friends of mine that had terminal illnesses, and they since passed. But when I asked, I was like, how do I, and even asked, like, how do I even ask you? Can you tell me? Because I'm not sure what to say.
Mm.
And that is helpful too. If you don't know what to say, ask, like, "Hey, what do you want me to say?" And just say, well, just say, I'm sorry for your loss. Like, okay, I really am sorry for your loss. Or if, like they said, when it comes to terminal illness, they're like, I don't want someone to say, I'm sorry. I want someone to say, hey, well, how can I support you and your family during this time? Kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah. And also getting angry with them,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to, like, cancer, fuck cancer.
Exactly.
That is the kind of cliche statement, but seriously,
True.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
how dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you riddle my body with this?
Yeah.
Last year, we lost a friend to brain cancer that came on so suddenly.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah. Well, and I felt that way with my friend that was diagnosed with ALS. And, and he was a big guy, like handsome, big, played football, sports, athletic. And then he gets this horrific, debilitating, disease. And he has since passed. But it's just like, I felt the same way. I'm like, how can you do this to somebody? It kind of goes back to, how can getting angry with God? How can you do this to someone? Like, why couldn't you do this to a child molester or an animal abuser? Like, why do they get off scot-free?
And that's part of the grieving process. It's okay to get angry.
Yeah.
You can get angry at inanimate objects too. Stupid chair, stupid chair.
Right.
Why did the chair have to go? I mean, it's okay.
Yeah.
Displaced anger is valid too.
Yeah. Well, like,
You can get mad at anything you need to. All these emotions are valid. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't recognize is whatever emotion you're having, it's a valid emotion.
Mhm.
Anger, fear, sadness, sorrow, grief, loss, all these things, all of our emotions, happiness, to laugh in the middle of a funeral might be appropriate. If who's feeling it? No, seriously. I mean,
know. Or crying at a wedding.
funny things. Yeah, exactly. Like, your emotions are valid.
Hmm.
Now, there's a lot of people who don't cry or find it difficult to cry. So, in that regard, I encourage them to watch movies or TV shows that, can bring up those feelings. If you're not as in touch with your emotions, you and I both are. Big name pop, but we are.
Yeah.
But a lot of people can't tap into that. I know one girl, her mom died and it took her 3 years to cry.
Hmm.
3 years.
Wow.
Because she wasn't connecting it. She just couldn't.
Yeah.
She was just not able to feel the emotion. So, when I'm working with clients like that, what I suggest is watch Terms of Endearment.
Any
In this crap movie, I made a list. Steel Magnolias, Brian's song, Bridge Over Madison County,
Yeah.
Old Yeller.
Yeah. Yeah, any movie with a dog, like even the animated pet, with animated fake pet, I still cry. I was like, don't. They're like, oh, did you watch this dog movie? Like, no, I don't ever watch a dog movie because the dog always dies. Like Marley and Me. Nope.
Well, remember those old telephone commercials back Pacific Bell when we had, dial-up rotary phones?
Yeah.
Try to telephone commercials.
Right.
I haven't talked to you in so long. Oh, I touch.
Yeah.
I'm into tears. So these movies are not good for people like you and me.
Yeah, no, I won't.
Can't tap into that emotion. This is a great segue for it. Or read a book.
Yeah.
Find something that's on this subject that can really elicit those emotions. It's okay to have something because they actually have done research on tears. And, I got this quote from General Hospital when I was looking. And
Dr. Laura.
I loved it. I loved it. Tears are the cleansing of the soul. Well, it wasn't until after college, it might have even been after grad school, I saw this study on teardrops, and they'd actually taken them, put them under a microscope, and looked at them. And each different teardrop has different chemicals in it. So if you have a tear from laughter, there's different chemicals than a tear for sorrow, for grief, for pain. Each teardrop is literally cleansing your soul of the toxic
See.
chemicals. So cry it out.
Yeah, I must have a really clean soul then. I could have been a great actress because I literally could cry on you go, okay, yeah. So, well, that's super interesting to know that there's a difference between laughter and tear because I love to when I get to the point where I'm crying laughing, like I'm laughing so hard and it's just like but then you feel that catharsis afterwards because that's the thing. And they say, and I was watching, it was a YouTube video on a guy that talks about that the breathing exercises are really incredible. I love breathing exercises. And I do when I get that, my brain gets triggered on something that parasympathetic or that sympathetic nervous system starts to get a little crazy. And I start to get a fear, a bill is coming. Oh my God, I got to freak out. But I'll just start doing breathing exercises and little affirmations like, everything's okay. I'm okay. I'm safe. All is well. Start tapping. Yeah. So I do that too. So, but breathing, but he was saying that in this YouTube video that the breath after a cry, that is the healing breath after that starts to kick in your parasympathetic nervous system so you can start to recover. Mm-hmm. So that's it, breathing it because you see kids after you cry really hard, you're like, it's actually healthy breath.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, and I didn't think about that. And you could do it and there's breathing exercises for that. So, and I've kind of incorporated that into my daily practice when I start to feel that. I was like, okay, remember those breathing exercises you do.
A lot of breathing exercises, they breathe into the diaphragm.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I learned because I'd lost my voice and I had to go to an expert who had to deal with the voice and stuff like that. I can't remember what her profession was, but anyways, I learned that our lungs are in our rib cage, and we have a rib cage in our back.
Mm-hmm.
That is covering your lungs. Mm-hmm. How frequently do we breathe? We can feel it in our back. Not very often.
Yeah.
So what I suggest to my clients is breathe in so deep. You feel it in your rib cage, in your back. So when you're doing your, box breathing or whatever breathing you're doing,
I'll breathe nose, nostril breathe.
he taught me some other stuff that I've incorporated. I do balloon breathing that I teach.
Oh, nice. Oh, cool.
Yeah, so my book's going to explain that because I have to have a balloon and there's a diagram. But anyway,
So,
another podcast.
so you have a book coming out. Let's talk about that real quick.
It's called Anxiety Annihilated. It should be out this fall. And it is basically a summary of a year's worth of therapy in a book. It's because I'm cash only. I don't take insurance. I can give super bills and stuff like that. But it prices some people out and they're not able to see me. So I wanted to still be able to give my tools to people. So I wrote the book. There's actually a workbook that I'm working on to go alongside of it. And there'll be workshops and podcasts and junk like that,
I love that.
yeah, app and everything. So that starts to hopefully be out by October. And, I hope that you'll invite me back on.
Of course. Yeah. Well, gosh, always. I love, I love seeing you, and you're just such a beautiful light. And I don't know, just sometimes when I hear your voice, I feel better.
Oh, well, so much to me.
Yeah.
So we need to definitely get together again soon.
I got to come up and visit, or I need to come back down there.
Yeah.
So one last question, and then, I know you're busy and it's Friday and we got a weekend, and we'll talk offline about your fun weekend plans. And so it's probably spring down there in Newport, and the water is probably beautiful, which part I miss. And that was a loss, leaving Newport and coming up here. But anyway, we've already discussed all that. But how can someone rebuild their life after loss? How do they one, find you, so your website, or how do they find the tools that they need? Because I was fortunate that I had discovered EMDR early on and had started, and maybe it was God's way of saying, hey, you're going to deal with some major stuff in the future. So go ahead and do this now proactively. So how do people rebuild and find the tools to help them rebuild?
Oof, everybody's different. So it's, it depends on the coping skills that they have now, the support system that they have now. So if you don't have those things, definitely find a therapist. If you do have those things, but they're not enough, find a therapist. One thing we didn't talk about that I can add, use the loss to inspire your growth.
Mm-hmm.
This is your bucket list. Make your priorities. If you're working all the time and you're a workaholic, is that really what you want to do with your time? Or are there people that you want to invest in? Are there activities that you want to do? Do you want to have this inspire you to maybe work out more so that you don't have a similar complication?
Right.
We've all got different things that we've maybe been putting off. And this is a very immediate reminder that we don't know if we have tomorrow.
Yeah.
So what can you do with today? How can you be a blessing in someone else's life? Because if you look around, all of us have something that we're probably still grieving.
Mm-hmm.
Have things that we've had to overcome. How can I be there for this person? How can I be there for another person, a group of people?
Yeah.
Group therapy. Because I allow this loss to be a blessing to someone else, if not myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Well, so how do people find you if they're like, I'm dealing with this? And do you do telehealth, and how can people find you?
Okay, so I'm in person in Newport Beach, and then I also do telehealth for all of California. I also coach worldwide, and I also do seminars and team building activities for conferences and stuff like that. My website, the easy way to find me is my name, arolynburns.com. But there's also the business, which is treatment.com. Easiest way is Arolyn Burns will get you where you need me to be.
Right. And I'll post this too with all so everybody can find you. But oh, Arolyn, thank you so much. I love you. You're just a blessing in my life, and I'm so grateful. Like I met you years and years and years ago, and thank you for giving your time and your expertise and your advice, because I know a lot of people are hurting right now and a lot of people are suffering loss. So I hope whoever is listening to this, number one, I'm here for you. We're here for you. You're not alone. I hope this was helpful, and this will, hopefully help somebody. Like if it helps one person, then I've done my job, and I know you've done yours. So thank you so much for sharing everything. Thank you so much for tuning in. And before you go, if you found this valuable, then please take a second to subscribe to this podcast. And if you know someone who is grieving or going through loss, please tell them about this episode. Share it on your social media because, like I said, we are all dealing with some sort of loss these days. And by you sharing, you can help a friend out. So thank you again, and I'll see you next week.